Here are some of my favorite ideas for living room furniture that I made in the past. In the following, I'm going to show you some pictures about the making process of them. Also, I made some drafts that are linked in the video description as well. The idea for the wine shelf is from my brother and me, but I guess it's a rather common way to build it. In the draft, all needed dimensions are marked. I used oak wood for all visible parts because I really like its texture. At first, I cut out all the wooden pieces, got rid of the bark and gave it a rough first sanding. Then I cut out all the wooden dowels and repaired the splintered area with wood filler. Also, I set the shelf all together to see if everything fits. Afterwards, I drilled the 35mm holes for the wine bottles in the front panel, gave it another sanding with 120 grit and oiled it with regular oil. When it had cured, I sanded it with 180 grit again. The ceiling lamp is a mix of ideas that I found in the internet and some of my own. It basically consists of a lower oak piece and an upper piece that I used beechwood for. Here I started with drilling the 3 holes for the downlights in the lower piece as well as 2 smaller ones for the switches. In the upper plate I drilled 7 holes for the 3 lower and 4 upper spotlights. To be able to turn on the upper and lower ones separately, I installed 2 switches that can be accessed from above. I then used the upper plate as a guide for the cable cutouts that I made with a router. Afterwards I sanded it with 120 grit and oiled it. Before installing the electrics I gave it a final sanding with 180 grit. The electrics are very simple, basically it's just 2 separate circuits where all lamps are parallel. Then I screwed the plates together and made a cover for the ugly hole in the ceiling with my 3D printer. I used a set of steel wires that already came with attachments to mount it to the ceiling. I found the idea of this guitar holder somewhere in the internet but couldn't find a plan, so I decided to make my own. It basically consists of 2 pieces. The one that holds the guitar I made of 10mm beech plywood, and the other one, which is being mounted to the wall, is made of 18mm laminated beech wood. It's also important to add a small wooden bar to the wall piece to prevent the holder from tilting when holding a guitar. I found a wonderful picture of a music stand online, but it was a bit hard to make, so I tried to simplify it a little. The 2 long vertical pieces are straight in the upper and bent in the lower area. Each of the parts consists of 3 layers of pine wood. At first I aligned it as well as I could, and then put wood glue to all adhesive surfaces and clamped the straight part to a table. I then hung something heavy on the overstanding lower part and put as many clamps to the piece as I could find. The bottom piece is made of 12mm ply. The vertical pieces of the sheath notes bracket was made of 10mm pine wood. I cut out all 5 notches for the horizontal bars, where the very low one has a different size. I also drilled holes for the wooden dowels in all notches and the holes for the attachment on the upper side of it. To strengthen the thin horizontal bars I added a bent piece that consists of 2 layers of pine. The long vertical parts were drilled every 5 cm to make the height adjustable and to be able to use this music stand in a sitting and standing position. At last I added some reinforcements for the bottom plate, which I attached with wooden dowels and glue. After sanding it with 120 grit, I glued all pieces in place. I then oiled it and gave it a last 180 grit sanding. The vertical pieces are just screwed together and the bottom part is inserted into its reinforcements, so everything can be disassembled if needed. Another great feature is the fact that the angle of the sheet note bracket can be adjusted with the lower bar.